Maybe, maybe not. Welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Quick rundown of the top 5 stories in NCPA. Fetterman agreed to debate Oz. Fascinating. Also, I found fascinating, there was a bunch of numbers just released on the current state of the housing market in the country. Thankfully, we have a real estate agent in the office to answer some questions for us. In the 2022 NFL kickoff, before we get to all of that, breaking news on Queen Elizabeth, stories dropping left and right here in the Williamsport area. The most important thing of all, Mark, how are you feeling today?
Mark got his annual physical this morning.
All right.
Some numbers are high. I need to eat better and exercise more, apparently.
That fascinates me because for a 50-year-old, I find you to be somebody who exercises regularly.
I do mostly.
I don't think you overindulge yourself. Like you pick what you want to eat, and you're not a salad eater by any stretch.
No.
But I've also you're not like a 2-burger dude. Like I've seen you eat, and you don't overindulge. So I'm shocked that
apparently
that was the report.
Apparently, I need to be more of a salad eater.
Okay.
That is what was recommended.
Okay.
Not what did she say? They're not bad enough on medicine.
Okay.
So she's like, they're higher than they should be according to the margins.
Okay.
But let's do this. Let's do 6 months worth of try to eat some freaking vegetables, you moron.
Okay.
And exercise a little more.
I will say this, having been around you now for a solid 3 years, I don't think I've ever seen you eat fruit or vegetables.
I like some fruit. I don't eat them as much as I should.
Okay.
It is the convenience of eating bad food is so freaking convenient. The other thing, because I asked her this is interesting. I said, are we talking about cardiovascular? Or are we talking about weight training?
Okay.
And she said, well, as people get older, we want them to continue to keep muscle mass on and to keep lifting weights. And I said, I get that for general health, but I'm talking about these numbers. And she even said because of muscle build and what extra muscle does to the blood and it's really important. Yeah. And because I said because she showed me my old numbers, she showed me my new numbers and when they got worse. And I said to her, I hurt my elbow. Okay. And I think I had tendonitis. I did it throwing a football, but whether it's tennis
who cares?
Elbow or golf elbow or whatever. But so there was some exercises I could do in the gym, some that hurt.
Okay.
So then I was like, am I really going to do, and I just got lazy about it because I was like, I need to just let it rest.
Okay.
So that may have been part of it. And I would assume when we talk about burning stuff off, okay, I think we always think about running or, treadmills or things like that where you build up a big sweat. And when in actuality, weight training and building of muscle mass, there's such a healthy aspect to that as well. So we're going to see. I'm going to try. She also said this, whatever you're eating now, just cut it in half. If you eat a sub 5 days a week for lunch, eat it 2 or 3.
That's still wild to me though, because again, I don't view you as an indulger. Now I will say this, you are a bread eater.
I love bread.
You eat a ton of bread because you're big on subs, you're big on sandwiches, even you like pizza. Which
I just had. I left the doctor's appointment where she said you need to eat less of this, and then I just had leftover pizza for lunch.
Okay. So you're a bread guy, but I don't know. I'm not calling out anybody. I'm an awful eater. I pretty much eat whatever I want when I want.
And it's the funny thing is I like a lot. I don't say I like most vegetables. It's just you can't go to a drive-through and get vegetables.
Sure.
It's just so convenient.
You have to proactively decide that this is what I'm doing.
It is a kind of a lifestyle. This is what I'm going. Yes, this is what I'm going to do. And I also scheduled my first colonoscopy. Well, I didn't. It's not scheduled yet. These are the things you have to look forward to when you're 50.
Okay.
The thing, spring salad mix. The thing about the reason I like having just gone to the doctor is now I don't have to have another prostate exam for a year.
That's good.
So I made it through that. But I do want to, this is my funny story from the doctor. Other than the fact that you're too young, you haven't had a prostate exam yet.
I haven't. I thought I was like on deck to do so.
You're close.
I was just informed though that I probably should wait longer.
Okay.
I was told that I really don't need to get one yet.
Well, one of the instructions is don't hyperventilate.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I'm not the only one that's a little on edge about this.
Sure.
But like, I don't like. When I get my blood pressure taken, I don't like it at all.
Oh,
like
really?
my toes are curled up. Like I can't relax.
Is it just like an anxiety thing?
Like I just don't. I don't know. I don't like needles. I don't like the blood pressure cuff.
Weird.
I don't.
Do you have good circulation though? Like, do your fingers get cold or numb, or like your toes?
My feet get cold, but my fingers are fine.
Okay. See, this could be complete and utter bull crap. I have like bad circulation. Like my fingers are usually cold. My hands are cold. My feet are usually cold. All that stuff. So when your
heart is cold,
very cold. So when they do the blood pressure thing, I've been told that the reason it really doesn't bother me as much is because I'm like used to having poor circulation to begin with. So like it doesn't, the effect of like the arm and the numbing and like the pressure, it's like
okay. Oh, but you're not a roller coaster guy, are you?
I hate roller coasters.
Okay, because I was gonna say, my oldest daughter and I both have. It's called like a gray out.
Okay.
If you do one with loops. And you kind of get the G forces in your head, like the dudes in Top Gun.
Yeah.
Like I could never be a Top because I would black out.
Okay.
Because some people will handle it better, and I don't know if it's a blood pressure. Like my blood pressure's good, I just don't like having it done. But anyway, be that as it may, I'm in the waiting room. The nurse comes to get me. How are you doing today? I was like, well, I was doing well. It depends what you're going to tell me here in the next half hour as to how the rest of my day goes.
Right.
And she's like, oh, we try to bring good news and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, we'll see if there's. So height, weight, I go into the little waiting room or into the little office room. She comes in with me, starts the questionnaire. And mind you, she just told me how she didn't say everything was going to be good. She said, we try to bring good news, blah, blah, blah. It'll be. The first question she asked me is, do you have a living will? And I'm like, this is not starting out well at all, really. Nothing instills confidence. Like, no, it'll probably be fine. Your number, I've seen your blood results because they have them. Like, I did my blood test like a couple weeks ago, and then they had them.
Right.
First question: do you have a living will? You need to rearrange the order of the questions. So that's it. That's my day.
That was it.
That's my day.
Are they? I shouldn't say are they allowed to do that. That can't be like practice or like protocol.
What?
Asking if you have a living
will. There's a form.
Okay, and that's one of the first questions?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Wow, so it is protocol.
And maybe, I don't know, but, maybe, and I keep saying because I'm 50. I told her, because they kept saying through all this stuff, well, now that you're 50. We got to the end, and I said to the nurse, this is like the 7th time you people have told me I'm 50. Like, it's bordering on harassment. Like, I know I'm 50. I'm well aware. You don't have to keep reminding me.
See, maybe my version of a 50-year-old, and time's so weird, but my version of a 50-year-old is so much older than what you appear to be. And I'm not trying to gas you up. I'm not trying to make you feel better because you had a traumatic experience at your physical. But I'm the same way. Like, even when I think of like a 35-year-old and I look at like my friends and myself, like that it's not what I envision, like a mid-30s.
I don't feel 50.
Yeah, no.
I'll say that. Well, sometimes my left ankle does. My elbow did for a while.
I get
like
it.
There's parts of me, but like emotionally, I don't know what a 50-year-old's supposed to be like. But I haven't hit that yet.
You haven't hit that yet.
I have not hit that.
Do you want to? Let's do this real quick. We want to try something new. Do you want to give a shout out to a sponsor that we just brought back on? Can I lead the floor to you? Can I?
Just welcome back to Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. They're all over the region, and just we want to thank our sponsors. Because without them, who are we? And, obviously we bring benefit to them because we're advertising. We're like, the modern newspaper. But we help them and they help us. And we all try to help the community. And that's so we just want to say thank you to Blaze. And we'll probably do this.
Yeah, we'll have more as we go along. I wanted to try something new, too. Just top 5 stories. We might not stay on them very long. But at NorthcentralPa.com, there is a most popular section. I was going through them this morning. The most popular stories this morning, the incident reported at South Williamsport Elementary School. Were you around I can't remember if you were around during the day when this was going down.
Yeah, I was here.
So you can go on and you can read the story, kind of the breakdown of how it happened. when parents were notified, all of that stuff. Second story, most popular story, inmate found dead at Lycoming County Prison. There was an inmate who had been incarcerated since Friday, was found dead in his cell several days later. So again, you can
wait. He just got incarcerated
on
Friday,
and was found dead in his cell several days later. So you can get online and you can read about that as well. Number 3, and this is
so hold on, and I don't mean it. Did you read the article? Because I did not.
It's
read
a
that
very
one.
short article.
Do they think it was self-inflicted, or do they think, or don't they say?
So the cause of death is unknown at this time. An autopsy was completed today by Forensic Pathology Associates in Allentown.
So okay.
Yeah, so they'll find out. Interesting story. One of the more fascinating things that we've been running is the Blue Collar Bookseller reviews. If you haven't checked these out yet, really, really interesting. And if you're not a big reader, these are perfect for you. But he talks about Pennsylvania lore, different books he's read. The most recent one he just did was on Bigfoot in Pennsylvania. So some of the stories behind Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, different rumors, things like that. So you can check that out as well. And then 4 and 5 were just your typical evening news, unfortunate stories. 4 was an alleged drunken driver causes early morning accident. That was outside of Berwick, PA. And number 5 was a man charged for allegedly raping a woman at a Lewisburg hotel. So that was 4 and 5 on the list. So most popular stories at NorthcentralPa.com. If you're looking for today's news, that's where I always just go. I don't know what your strategy is when you go to the site. Mine is always I kind of zoom in on that most popular first.
You're a greatest hits kind of guy.
Little bit.
I wonder, back to the Bigfoot, because that's what has intrigued me here.
Yeah.
Across the northern tier, when you look at a map of Pennsylvania, if you never do, the vast majority of state game land is at the top.
Yes.
It's not evenly distributed.
Correct.
So throughout, I would guess through that the sightings of Bigfoot, if they're not in, Tioga or Potter, or you just keep going a little west of Potter, and that's where they are.
For the most part. So there's a lot of different things. Because now there's these databases and these websites that are all dedicated to Bigfoot sightings and reportings. What a lot of people don't know, California, Washington are kind of the whole redwoods, that whole thing. Obviously, they're the most. Pennsylvania is number 3 for Bigfoot reportings and sightings.
Really?
Yes. Now, some of that is what you just described. There's a mass, kind of the whole range from outside of Pittsburgh up to North Pennsylvania. But also part of it, black bears, because they're a little lighter than grizzly bears, this is what I've been explained, because they're lighter, a little more nimble than grizzly bears, they are more likely to stand on 2 feet.
Okay. And
so because of that, researchers and scientists and people who may not believe in Bigfoot believe that might be the cause for more sightings in Pennsylvania than
it was a bear. I was a Bigfoot. Larry, it was a bear. I'm telling you, it was Bigfoot.
Yes. So that's part of
that could be. I was going to say too, that is it's a very interesting zoological philosophy, and that makes sense. When you think of the places out west, where there's so much space and so much wilderness,
wild.
Montana, but there's no people there.
Yes.
So in Pennsylvania, we can't even, you get Pittsburgh, you get Erie, you get, up into New York State where you got Buffalo, and and then there's this. So we're not that far from these areas of lots of wooded area and very small population. But, you go out in Wyoming or, these places where you can drive hours and hours and hours and not hit a city. Here it's different. So maybe that's why.
The other big, I don't want to call it the challenge, but let's say we were looking for a Bigfoot or any species of any kind. One of the things that makes Pennsylvania unique as well is the density of the woods. So for example, there are parts in California, Washington, Montana, where it's vast, but the density of the woods is different, right? If you're walking through the redwoods, it's kind of more open. The trees are massive, but it's more opened up. It's not really the thick of things. Pennsylvania can be so dense and so thick, the visibility, it's hard to see. So Pennsylvania does have this range has some unique aspects as far as nature, wildlife, seeking out species that kind of lends itself to maybe seeing a part of something, but not fully knowing what you saw. So there you go.
Okay, I have a story for you. This is true. My old high school baseball coach, tournament legend, Carter Giles, and he now lives in Montana. He retired and moved to Montana.
Mm-hmm.
But he told this story once. They made a trip to Alaska one summer. They were school teachers, and he's an outdoorsman and he teaches survival class and stuff.
Okay.
And a couple of them drove. He's not a flyer.
Yeah.
So he drove to Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
This was in the 70s, I think. They met someone. This is what he told me. And so take it with a grain of salt. They met this group that was sponsored by National Geographic that was going to look for Bigfoot.
Okay.
So they meet him at a diner or roadside, whatever, up in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that they're like, oh, that's cool. Can I give you a call after the summer and let me know how you did and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think either on a napkin or on a gum wrapper or something, wrote down this guy. They went out and looked, and he claims they've never been heard from again.
Okay.
They went looking for Bigfoot and
were lost.
disappeared.
Well, I told you the staggering numbers of people that go into the woods in America
and never come out.
The numbers are, we're talking tens of thousands of people. It's mind blowing. The other one, and I don't know if you've seen this, because obviously Bigfoot would be a mammal, so a primate, all this stuff. There are stories in America of certain species not being seen for decades and then being rediscovered, or they find, and it just
the coelacanth.
Yeah. They just I was just reading about this last week. Somewhere down at the Arizona, New Mexico, Mexico border, there is basically a mountain lion I believe it's a jaguar is the exact terminology, but a big cat that basically roamed between Mexico and into the United States, where you just never see him. And they did not see this animal for almost a decade, and they just assumed it had died.
Right.
And they literally just now, on 3 different cameras, have found the animal again. So here's the point that I'm making is, I think we have this idea of there's cameras everywhere, and how do you not see it and everything. The vastness of America, and then the ability of some of these other mammals to kind of evade capture, to evade just not being seen for as long as they do. I don't think Bigfoot's real. Would I be shocked though if it ever did happen? I don't think I would be.
I would be.
You would be?
That's not real.
If there was some random primate or some random mammal it would shock you. I don't believe it, but it wouldn't if it was breaking headline news, I don't think I would fall out.
And I keep picturing, because I'm old, I'm picturing the Andre the Giant Bigfoot from the $6 Million Man.
You're picturing Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes, that's what I'm picturing.
Yes.
So, yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah, listen, I don't think it's real. I'm just saying the vastness of the country. I think people have a misconception of how elusive some of this stuff is and how difficult it is to actually find it. That's all. But no, I do not think Bigfoot is real.
Well, and the other, depending on where they live, how they live, if they live mostly underground, if they're nocturnal, if they're, there are.
I make this argument to people all the time too, because they're we were out in the woods and I've never seen a bear in the woods, or I've never seen this in the woods, stuff like that. And I'm they've seen you.
Right.
They've seen you. And so I do think there's this idea of we would have seen it. And it's how many people actually know what they're looking for when they go, how many random joggers actually know when they look right and they look left, what they would even be looking for. How many people drive by a deer and it's 10 feet that way and they never even see the deer?
How many?
Yeah,
if ocean swimmers know how close they
want to get in,
they were to a shark.
Yeah, they
people go to the beach every year when they finally die, and they meet their maker, and God's in 2017, there was a bull shark 7 feet from you, and they're what? Yeah, he ate the night before, so he wasn't hungry. He was just swimming around.
Yeah,
but he was a 6-foot bull shark, and there he was. Yeah. You just never saw him.
No, it's fascinating.
That's one of the. Have you seen? obviously, because you do this more than I do, the drone pictures of the ocean.
Oh yeah, it's wild.
Where they have like, it almost sometimes
wild.
it looks like chocolate chips in there. Oh, there's one, and there's one, and there's one, and there's one. Yeah, it's nuts.
No, they're everywhere.
Today, reason number 74 why the beach is overrated. But go ahead.
You don't like the beach at all.
The beach is overrated. I don't. It's just overrated.
Fetterman agreed to one debate against Oz in the Pennsylvania Senate race. For those, in case you haven't been keeping up with it, Oz and some of the Republicans had been kind of pressuring him, calling him out for it. Fetterman believed it was a ploy against his recovery. Is that a fair way to say it? Basically, you're saying the only reason you want to debate me is because you're trying to challenge my recovery.
No, because they're losing. That's why they want to debate.
That's fine. Pressuring him. So he has agreed to do one debate. He was quoted as to saying that he does believe that this debate is strictly to try to prove that his recovery is not going well or that the recovery is not successful. However, he has agreed to do just one.
I think it's important to notice that we had a long discussion about Bigfoot before we talked about the Fetterman-Oz debate. Well, when Dr. Oz was here last week at the Genetti speaking to his people, it's one of the things he mentioned.
Yes.
And it is I guess maybe in the naivety, you think that this is part of it, but we remember in the Jamie Flick told us that he wanted to debate and he couldn't get one, that it's not part of it. Yes. You know, like you sign up for a job, they fingerprint you, they get, you do a physical, there's these processes, and you're like, these are the processes, this is what we do. You think that you're running for election, if there's someone running against you, you have to have a debate, and you don't.
Right.
And the person who thinks they're winning, or the polls show that they're winning, you don't really have, you don't have to win by a lot. No. You just have to win. So the risk to reward right now for Fetterman is way greater than the risk to reward for Oz, because Oz is losing.
So I had three things down here. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, like good or bad, I think this is good or bad for Fetterman? What is there something under the tea leaves here to be taken from this? Because I would have agreed a week ago, there probably wasn't a ton of benefit for Fetterman to do this. And so now if you are Fetterman, why, I can't imagine he's doing it unless they believe there is a chance that they might lose. There is a chance it could be beneficial. I was trying to figure out what that is, because I agree with you. I don't think a week ago I would have been like, well, Fetterman should do this.
If he had a 10-point lead, if they thought they had an insurmountable lead, that they wouldn't do it. Obviously, Fetterman thinks he's healthy enough, good enough. Mm-hmm. He's practiced enough, been schooled enough to hold his own. If he does one, then he's taken that off the table, because they can't say he won't have another debate.
So what I wanted to say to you was, do you think he thinks he has a chance to just lay the hammer down? Like, he doesn't even have to necessarily win the debate. He just has to show that he's a healthy, functioning person, and that will end it. Is that what you
That's believe? He'll do one, and that's all I need. And he has so many talking points of the traditional. Oz doesn't live in Pennsylvania. He's not a Pennsylvanian. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know what a veggie tray is. He thinks it's a crudité or whatever it is.
I get that.
So it shouldn't be. I can't imagine one debate is that hard, because when you watch these debates, they never answer the question that's asked anyway. No. They just say whatever they want to say.
That's the interesting thing, because I'm also curious. I don't dislike Fetterman. I don't really love Fetterman. Like, I have a couple of friends who really like him. I haven't gotten into that. I'm not there. But there are some, I don't know if you've ever seen, first he was a mayor of a very small town. Have you ever seen this before? He was the mayor. He was a mayor of a very small town for a while. There was an incident with him with a jogger. He had a gun as the mayor. He got it out of his car. There's this whole backstory to it. I am curious, you had mentioned Oz with the Pennsylvania stuff, and that's the stuff where I'm Fetterman. I'm trying to gauge why he would do this, because now you are lending a platform to bring up this stuff. They're going to bring up his time in Braddock. They're going to bring up the incident with the jogger. They're going to bring up, and they might not be able to paint a bad picture of him in one debate. But right now, if you ask the majority of Pennsylvanians in the state, like the Braddock thing is non-existent. Like the only Fetterman that they actually know is the Fetterman that was in Harrisburg, like the guy wearing his hoodie, like going around and campaigning. So you do lend yourself opening up the door to this past that I think a lot of people don't know.
It's like taking the witness stand.
A little bit, kind of. And now every question is there. And like you said, politicians are paid to figure out how to avoid those questions. But I am curious to see how he does with that. The last thing to me that is fascinating about all of this Oz Fetterman stuff. By the way, it was on Tucker Carlson. I don't know if you saw it.
No.
Tucker Carlson talked about it. And it was on Mar again as well.
Okay.
So we are
the news.
I disagree with people who think it's unfair to question his health. I'm not saying it should be the number one talking point in like a state race. I'm not saying that it is the most important thing to me in this race is whether or not fair. I don't understand the people that are like, well, he shouldn't, like, that's unbelievable that Oz would bring that up, or that's so unfair that I don't think that's true.
Oh, I agree with you. I think it's a very
fair and reasonable thing.
I think it's absolutely relevant.
I remember at the beginning of the presidential debate, I was very curious to see what Biden looked like and sounded like in a public forum unscripted. And so I think personally, I think Fetterman's probably fine. I think it's probably overblown. But this idea that like Oz or anybody else that would question it, I don't understand the ridicule behind that. I don't.
No, I'm with you. But yes, it does open him up. It'd be interesting to see what the points are now. How much does he have a 4-point lead? Does he have a 6-point lead? I haven't seen one.
I was reading around this morning. I did.
But there is, because I know every ad that Oz runs calls him what? There's an adjective
that he calls Fetterman, or that Fetterman refers to Oz?
Yeah, it's not extremist, but whatever. But that he's weak on crime. You watch the Oz and he wants to free all the criminals.
Yes.
But then you watch the Fetterman ads and he went into it because he was a school teacher and he went into politics because there were like murders in his town and he wanted to, so he wanted to be tough on crime. So those two things are totally polar opposites.
It's an interesting
radical. That's the word they always use. He's radical.
It's a really interesting case study in like political campaigning because on one hand, some of the Braddock stuff was a disaster. Like he was going to clean up the town. He really didn't do it. Like if you go through, at one point, Braddock had like some of the highest murder rates per capita, like in the country.
Okay.
So now listen, is that like the fault of the mayor? Right. I'm not sitting here like short of the mayor walking around like, I don't know. Like some of this stuff is harder to solve than what people make it out to be. However, there is a lot of things that like he got into politics to do this, to do that, to this. But then when you go through some of the numbers, I'm kind of like, boy, I don't know if he really did those things. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges for Fetterman, if he were trying to switch over a conservative, right? Like if he was trying to get a Republican to vote for him, I think one of the biggest challenges is if you're a Republican, you're looking at the results and it's like, it's a great story. Like this teacher who wanted to help his community and everything else. But then when you look at the numbers, it's like he didn't do any of it and he just kind of kept jumping away and he didn't actually stick around and solve any of it, any of the problems he campaigned on. So I think it's a fascinating case study of how what he is saying can back one side's belief and how the numbers can back the other side. And I don't think either side is wrong. Like I think when conservatives say he's weak on crime, I actually don't think they're wrong. And when I think Democrats say, like, listen, he wants to do this and he wants to help, and like, yeah, like I believe that. So I
just wonder too that at the end of the day, do people care about? Do they just want another blue vote or another red vote because the Senate is so? Would they vote for a potted plant just as long as
they had a red tie?
As they had a red tie or blue tie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be, and that middle there's the side that always votes red. There's the side that always
Sure.
votes blue. And those people who actually analyze it and go back and forth,
it'll be interesting.
they're going to make or break.
It'll be really, really interesting. So we'll see. As of right now, it's being referred to as the secret debate because there's not a time, there's not a place, there's not actually anything concrete set yet. So
maybe they'll come out afterwards and say, we're at it.
Maybe they'll come on the show. Maybe they'll sit on the couch.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be awesome.
Think we can do it?
No. But we can try.
Oz was here.
I think that's why we can't do it. Do you think Oz is coming to Williamsport twice? It's a long way.
Long way from where? From Jersey.
Well, I just said it's a long way. Just saying.
No, because now he lives in Montgomery County.
I'm not thrilled to vote in that election. I don't feel great about either things. So we'll see.
It's the thing that I find interesting is I think Oz, other than the fact that he's wealthy, everything else about him kind of looks and feels like a Hollywood, and Hollywood is all liberal.
Sure.
So if he, in a normal world, if you would have told me Oz is running for office, I would have thought he's a liberal.
Oh, sure.
And
I get it.
So that's where the question too, and it's not just to him, it's to all of politics. Is this really is it just being opportunistic?
Sure.
Or does he really care?
I would agree with that.
It's a fair question. And only he knows. Only in his heart he knows.
Sure.
But that's the question.
It'll be interesting. I wanted to bring this up to you because the numbers just came out today, and some of it is really interesting. As of right now, the pandemic housing boom in the U.S., you could say, is peaking according to the numbers. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can look at that, depending on where you live. If you live in Arizona or Michigan or I'm sure every area, Blossburg. I'm sure every area is different in whether or not you think it's peaking. However, for the first time since COVID started, the housing market as a whole in the United States, the average price of a house has gone down, as well as interest has gone back down since they first started raising interest prices. Yesterday, interest was at a high. It wasn't a high, but it was 6.25%. I think the high is somewhere around 6.4 something. And yesterday, it actually dropped down to 6.1-ish. So interest rates are declining. It's bringing up the question of the debate. Is this the peak of kind of what happened during COVID? Is this the beginning of the decline? Is this the beginning of getting back to the norm? Or is this just completely leveling out and this is where we are to stay? And that is kind of the debate that is going on between people that are in the market, agents, sellers, buyers, also the debate of people who are in finance, because one of the telltale signs for them of whether or not we're going to go into depression is the housing market and what happens to it. So today is this weird place where the numbers are showing something different in a lot of aspects, and everybody's kind of on pins and needles trying to figure out what's actually going to happen to it.
Well, and it's just like kind of prognosticating a football game. Like everyone has their theory and they really believe in their theory.
Right.
But, nobody knows. When everything got shut down on that, March 13th and everything was closed and for 6 weeks and realtors weren't working. We weren't really allowed to sell houses. We weren't allowed to show houses. Nobody knew what was coming. It's not like people were sitting there with their feet kicked up and said, as soon as this thing ends, it's going to be a madhouse. Mm-hmm. But that's what it was. Like people were scared, but they didn't know it was coming. So what is the housing market like in January? Nobody knows. We know there's going to be election in between. Mm-hmm. We know the House or the Senate's going to, whatever. But is it going to even have an effect? Probably not. But there is that fear. So, but there's the biggest thing that I saw from it is when you get more competition, mm-hmm. You have multiple people bidding on a house. Yes. I mean, there have been times I've been a realtor for 12, 13, something like that, over a decade. And there's times you put your house on the market and you were just hoping. Like it may take a month, it may take 2 months, it may take depending on where you're at. Then we got to a point, I put one on last May, mm-hmm. Not last spring. And it was just a normal house in Montoursville. In 48 hours, We had 14 showings, 4 offers, 3 of them were over asking price. And the morning that I was going to the client to present the offers, I got 2 calls that day in my car trying to schedule more appointments, and I was like, it's too late, it's already gone. So, but when you get multiple offers, if you're the seller, there's things you're looking for, and one of the things is you want to sell to someone who has cash.
Yes.
If you have a cash buyer, cash is king, because there's no appraisal, there's no bank to come in and screw it up, and there's nobody to turn around at the end of the day and say, whoops, I got laid off, or whoops, I lost my job, or whatever the case may be, and they get out of the deal. If somebody comes in and has cash, that's it. So the problem with that is, who doesn't have the cash to buy a house? Young people.
Sure.
So we had a time where if you're a 25 something, a 28 something, a 30, a first time home buyer, newly married, whatever, you can't buy a house, even though you're qualified and you have the money, because you go in and this 65-year-old who has the cash or who just sold their other house or whatever is beating you out. So one of the things that government kind of has to figure out for their own, and now you've got these corporations that have kind of come into this and they're buying up everything.
Yeah.
So, and they are, flush with cash, and they have all this. So they have to figure out a way that the young couples can still afford homes, because now with materials and with the inability to get materials and the cost of materials, you don't have new houses coming up.
No.
Like so people are just buying the old ones up. And if the rich people and the rich corporations buy the old ones up, the normal people coming up, they can't buy one.
To me, and I'm sure I'm simplifying this, to me, this is 90% an inventory problem.
Yes.
And so I've often, a couple of conversations I've had with my parents and different people, I honestly believe that the American housing market should honestly be split into 2 different sections. And when they talk about this and they do this math, one section should be like cities, larger areas. And then another section should be where people are moving to, because those are 2 very different things. Like, people are leaving California and their coastal cities to live in Arizona. And so what happens now is there's inventory across the board in America, but there's not enough inventory in Arizona to support what's happening. Like in rural Pennsylvania, there's not enough material to actually construct, like to actually keep up with inventory, to actually keep building. So you have places across the country, whether it's a Philadelphia, New York City, or stuff, where like they are trying to convince people to like come back or stay. But then you have all these other places that were basically flooded in the last year and a half with people trying to get out, and the inventory is just not there.
Well, one of the other things I don't know how much it's affected it, but I know it's hurt, is the Airbnb market.
Yeah.
That these companies are buying houses to have an Airbnb. And, you don't have to rent it, you only have to rent it out certain amounts of time, and you don't, and if you're busy in this time of year, busy in that time of year, but there's a value to that as well.
Right.
And it's not good for, as we talk about the gap between the rich and the poor and the middle class. If people who have the money to buy a house and are qualified to buy a house can't find a house to buy because all the rich groups, either rich individuals or the rich groups, are buying them all up, it makes it tough.
It really does. And it's a weird line too, because some of the stuff that happened in 2008 was basically giving a house to anybody.
Yes.
So it's this weird middle ground of like, you definitely don't want to create a system in which people are just able to get a house because they can. But you also need to create a system where like people need to be able to buy houses. I know that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but we are in this weird bubble of trying to find that balance of the 2, especially just coming out of I shouldn't say just coming out of 2008. It was 14 years ago.
Right.
But I mean, it is a weird conundrum that in 2008, we were giving away too many houses. And now in 2022, it's impossible to buy houses.
Yes.
So it's almost like we haven't been able to settle into this middle to allow itself to work out. We've gone to both extremes from 2008 to 2022. Just thinking out loud.
Yes.
That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
NFL football kicking off 2022.
Yep.
Tonight's the night.
Tonight's the night. Oh.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
Real quick, Kyle commented, are you not going to cover Fetterman leading in every poll and the reaction of those that supported Oz if Oz loses? I will say this, Kyle.
Wait, what do you mean? In the reaction of those that
supported Oz if Oz loses. I will say this. You did ask about the polls during the conversation. We had said that we hadn't seen any. So we did mention the polls. We brought it up. We just didn't have the numbers in front of us.
Oh, we said that Fetterman's winning.
Yeah, we
just don't know by how much.
We said Fetterman's winning in the poll. And then the reaction of those that supported Oz if Oz loses. I don't know if Oz himself has a ton of support. I think it's more just party affiliation.
I would agree with that. Did you hear this? That Oz gave an interview the other day on something, and I read the article, so I wish I would have. They asked him if he was a senator at the time, would he have endorsed Biden's election on January 6th? And he said, yes, he would have. Mm-hmm. He said he would not have moved for impeachment following right after that, but he would have endorsed isn't the right word, validated, whatever it was.
Sure.
And they're part of in the article now, there's that almost the if you are a Trump supporter, you still don't validate the election. And that if this is what the article was saying, if Oz came out and said, no, Biden won, Biden really did win, how many of the ardent Trump followers did he just piss off? And again, with all these things, if people keep saying, well, no matter how pissed they are, they're not going to go vote for Biden. There are three people in every election. There's the people who vote Democrat, there's the people who vote Republican, and the people who don't vote. And it's those people who are like, yeah, I don't, if Oz says the election was real, I'm not going to vote for the other guy, but I'm not voting for him either. And then they stay away.
It's interesting. I almost, not that I took like the complete opposite way. If you and I were advising Oz, I would say that the majority of people voting for him are not going to vote for Fetterman. They won't do it.
Correct.
So what's one of the things that you can say that might bring over a centralist or might bring over a Democrat if you truly believe there's no way your base is,
and that's the way
and
out.
To me, that's one. That is one of them, though. I think that's one of the things you could say.
It can bring more, absolutely.
Yes.
Bring the centrist, but did it push away people who had his vote?
The weird part is I cannot see somebody who is voting for Oz right now that would actually vote for Fetterman.
No, they won't flip. They'll just stay away.
You're just saying they just won't show up.
They just don't show.
Interesting. Okay. I saw the security blanket being like, there's no way these
people I agree with that. They're not going to flip.
So let's say,
but do they stay away?
Interesting. No, it's interesting.
And listen, I'm sure they've had, eggheads in the back room trying to calculate. Totally. If you say this, what's our damage and what's our profit?
Yeah.
But yes, he did say that just this week on some show.
I find them both, because you and I have said we have loved the banter back and forth.
Yes.
Like I have really enjoyed this race from like a laughing, haha, look at that from both sides. I've enjoyed it. I will say though, both of them to me, like I said to you, Elvish seems cartoony to me. They both just seem very cartoonish to me of what the other side is kind of like holding up. And for that reason, like, I'm just not thrilled to vote in it. Like, I'm just not.
Well, I guess I knew who Dr. Oz was, obviously, but I never watched the show.
Yeah.
So I don't know what. It would have been interesting to see what society's take on Dr. Oz was before he started. Like, we knew he was a doctor, but he was a TV doctor. Is like, how well respected is he? Is he super well respected? Do people think he's kind of like a talk show host? Is he a little Maury Povich? Is he? So that would have been interesting beforehand.
Don't you think the Oprah stuff helps?
Sure.
Like, I'm not saying there aren't people out there who don't think Dr. Phil is like absurd. Like, there are certainly people who think
Oprah made Dr. Phil.
Correct. But I think if you're in the Oprah fan, it's insane. This is where politics is. I think if you're in the Oprah fan base, there is a legitimacy to Dr. Phil where even if he's kind of corny, even if he's got the voice and like all that, like there's still like, well, he's on Oprah. Like, oh, like there's no way Oprah would have had some lunatic. You know what I mean? I think there's some of that with Dr. Oz. I think, and again, I'm nobody. I think there with this Dr. Oz stuff in Pennsylvania, I think there's a little bit of like the Trump aspect where Democrats just couldn't wrap their head around the idea that he could possibly win. Like when Trump was running, there were people in this area that just like, there's like, if you were a Democrat, like Trump can't win. Like it's not possible he could win. There's no way. I kind of feel that way with Oz a little bit. I think Democrats are kind of like, Fetterman's got it. It's in the bag. It can't. And I'm kind of like, I'm reading social media. I'm reading these reports. I'm kind of getting a feel for it. And I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's as in the bag. And again, this is coming from someone where like, I'm kind of out on this race. Like, I don't think I don't necessarily know if there's a win in this race, but I've said like, it's a little Trumpish in the sense of like, I think he can win more than what Democrats realize as far as Oz goes.
I thought going into the primary, I thought McCormick would win.
Yeah.
Because it was the same thing. Like to me, McCormick looked and acted and, you know, that's a Republican.
Sure.
And then Oz to me seemed different. And I was surprised. I don't know why. That one of my, you know, if I got to sit down and ask Donald Trump a couple questions, one of them would be like, why did you back Oz instead of McCormick? Because I was surprised. And I know Oz came from TV as well.
Sure.
But like McCormick was a very successful businessman and it just, so I don't know. I can't, the race was so close as it is and Trump backed Oz. I can't believe if Trump backed McCormick wouldn't have won.
Yeah.
And so yes, as we sit here and say Oz couldn't, I didn't think Oz could beat McCormick and he did. So I don't know.
It does. That's just the vibe I keep getting is it's a little Trumpish 2016 where like I think people just kind of blocked it. I think there are people in society that it's just hard to imagine them doing it, like pulling it off, whether you're watching a sport or you're watching politics, whatever it is. There's just certain people that come on screen and for whatever reason, we kind of like disevaluate what's happening because, well, clearly this person's going to win. And then you kind of just get in this mindset of like, it's good. And then it happens. And so when I talk to Democrats right now about Fetterman, it feels exactly like Democrats who talked about Hillary Clinton, where it was just like, there's no way she's going to lose. There's no way Trump is going to win this. And then, you know, that night it happens. And I feel the same way about Oz right now. I think Fetterman's in the lead. I'm not saying like the polling is wrong, but polling isn't factual. Like that's the weirdest part about polling. Like polling isn't factual. Polling is like you're getting a guess for what it is. And I think right now people are like, well, he's up 10, he's up 8. It's like, yeah, but that's who answers the phone to talk about this stuff? Like who actually?
No, I get it. Well,
so we'll see.
The other thing too is, as you know, as I just mentioned, what would have happened in the primary race or even if Trump had backed no one.
Right.
If Trump wasn't a factor and it was just those two going, it would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be interesting because still in the pocket of Fetterman, all the Democrats is Roe versus Wade. Yes. And it has been an effect everywhere. Totally. So they're going to pound that as it gets closer.
Absolutely.
And that's another one. What would this race look like if Roe versus Wade just didn't happen 4 months ago?
Yeah.
So because that will skew things as it has, whether it skews it a little bit or enough, that's the question.
No, I totally agree. Real quick before you go, 2 minutes, NFL kickoff. Do you have a pick for tonight? Bills, Rams. Do you care? Do you have a pick?
Brett, who's an obnoxious Rams fan, we hate him.
That's right.
Brett said that, Brett said the Bills are favored on the road.
The Bills are loaded.
Yes.
I know.
They still haven't made a Super Bowl lately.
I get that. They are. It is wild how good the Bills could be.
They are the sexy pick, obviously.
Sure. But I think rightfully so, the sexy pick. Right?
I mean, yeah, but to go on the road, well, I'd have to look at, and this is as I get older.
I'm assuming it's ring night. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, probably.
I'm assuming it's ring night. I know in the NBA, you always bet the other team on ring night.
Oh,
the
no.
NBA numbers, it's wild.
Brett gave me the stats. He said the Super Bowl champion, game one the next year, is something like, 46-11 or something absurd.
But are they usually playing are they usually
No.
Yeah.
But they're home. Like the Super Bowl champs at home. I'll have to look at their roster and see what they lost. But for them to be home against, I don't know.
So you would take the points and take.
I don't know if I would do that, but it's just, it's weird.
Yeah,
it is weird.
If you're ever bored one day, look up the NBA games on ring night. Blowouts, like not just that, like they get beat. Teams lose by like 30, 40 points. I mean, it's wild.
You know how hard it is to shoot with a ring on your finger?
It's really, really hard, apparently.
I mean, they play with it, right?
Yeah.
Don't they run around with like?
They might as well. If they're going to lose,
they might as well.
They might as well. It's wild. Who do the Cowboys have?
We play Sunday night. I think. Don't we have the Buccaneers?
We have Tampa Bay on Sunday night.
The Bucks. Brady's in a little domestic issue. Have you heard stuff about that?
Oh yeah. I haven't talked about it with you yet. Maybe that'll be something. Maybe we hit.
We'll save that for.
That'll be good.
But it is one of the things that shocks me about every sport is, college football's back, so we've kind of got back. But you'll be away from these sports for however many months, and then all of a sudden you get one weekend of it, and you're right back in the flow, and you feel like you never left.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
And then we'll go through for a few months, and then there'll be that basketball tournament, Michigan State, North Carolina, Duke, and the Blue Bloods. And you'll be like, oh, basketball's been here the whole time. And it hasn't. So that's one of the – it's going to be amazing how quickly. Like Sunday at 4, you're going to be like, whoa, we're at full speed here in the NFL. Happening. And it's been here for 3 hours.
There's I think the Buccaneers-Cowboys is fun. Like from a storyline, what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that's fun. The Monday night game, I'm not saying it's going to be good football. It's going to be fascinating to watch the Broncos. They just gave Russell Wilson a ton of money. Like, if he's even mediocre, I mean, it's going to get ugly quick there. Chiefs-Cardinals is one of the last
Don't they play Seattle?
Sunday. They play Seattle, yes.
Is it in Denver?
Yeah, but I think Seattle's so bad. I don't know.
But it's his old team. If it was in Seattle, it would be better.
Yes. Chiefs-Cardinals, just because Mahomes and Murray – the Kyler Murray stuff might be the most underrated story. They gave him blank tapes. He came in. They asked him if he watched the blitz packages. He said yes. And the tapes were blank.
Oh, that's what they did with, his name, years ago with the Raiders.
So they
did
this
kid out of LSU.
So they did this with Kyler Murray. So in his contract, he has like a video game YouTube, whatever, social media, like it's supposed to be limited and he's supposed to watch so much film. Like there's a time amount spent on film in this what was his contract?
He made some money.
It was a big contract. Then apparently he was complaining about play calling.
Jamarcus Russell, that's the guy.
They did for the Raiders. Then he was complaining about play calling. So then during the preseason, when he would come out for the second, third, fourth quarters, they would put a headset on him, and he had to call plays. And I don't know if you saw this or not. The first night he did it, it was atrocious. They didn't move the football. They punted 3 and out almost every time. It was really bad. So that whole, how do you have a quarterback that lied to you about watching film, complains about the play calling, and then puts the headset and can't do it? How is your relationship healthy? If you're
it's not.
If you're a head coach and you're going into your first game against Patrick Mahomes, how is that a healthy, reasonable relationship that you're about to have this season? So that is, and they just paid him. They just gave him hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, the question too becomes, how does this story get out?
Yeah.
Because
the tapes and stuff.
if you do the blank tapes, you want the media to know. You want him to be embarrassed.
Sure.
And
yeah.
But I just saw an interview with Jamarcus Russell about it.
Yeah.
And he kind of talked about it. You know, just kind of like this is the way I play, and this is the way he just
doesn't work at that level though.
No,
like, if you're not,
he just basically said I never needed to. I was lazy, and I was like,
yeah, until you got to.
And when you hear Jamarcus Russell speak, he's no rocket scientist.
Well, no, but there's still I don't know if you have to be a rocket scientist to be an NFL quarterback, because I was debating this last weekend. I think you have to be smart. I think you have to care. But I think you really, your processing has to be quick. Like, you have to be able to react and see something and not doubt yourself, like not question yourself.
Right.
And I think film helps with that. Like,
Right.
I think film helps you allow to react quicker. And so, like, these dudes not watching film or lying about film, I don't know. It's wild. I just wanted to mention Raiders-Chargers Sunday is fascinating as well, because the Chargers are loaded and people think the Raiders are really, really good again. And then there was one other one I
don't think Carr can win.
You don't think Carr can
I think
win?
when you listen to him talk, there's an aspect, your quarterback in a lot of ways is like your CEO. And when you listen to the great ones, and they can be young, they can be old, you know, but you get, you know, not just, you know, Rod. And I think that's one of the issues with Rodgers, that as the CEO, he's not really beloved. Like Peyton was beloved, and Brady and Russell Wilson, and even a guy like Mahomes, even though he's just a kid. And what's his name up in Buffalo, Josh Allen, and these guys that seem, you know, Rodgers walks in the locker room, I don't know if he even has half.
No, I would agree with that. That was the other game, is the Packers-Vikings. Just because of the rivalry, Rodgers doesn't seem to have a lot. It's going to be
of help, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
That could get ugly.
Well, because what's his name is a Raider now.
Yes.
His best Devontae Adams. Mm-hmm. So that certainly helps. And
I just like the matchups. Most of the time at the beginning of the NFL season, I'm not saying the matchups aren't great, but I feel like there's like legitimate, and some of it is because they did a lot of division stuff. Because even like your lower matchups, I think Patriots-Dolphins is interesting, just because of like the in division. Dolphins had all the signings. Patriots look like their signings from the previous year weren't great. Like, I don't know. And then like even Colts-Texans, I don't know. Like I said, Packers-Vikings.
Isn't there pressure on Belichick and the Patriots this year?
I think Belichick's done, personally. I have no sources and I'm nobody, but I think he's done. I just can't imagine. At some point, it just isn't fun anymore. I know that's probably never been like Bill Belichick's like MO, is to have fun. But you know what's fun is winning. And Bill Belichick got to do a lot of that. And so when it's done and you're not winning anymore, and it's not fun, and you're as old as he is, like, I don't know. I mean,
the thing, because Buffalo's clearly the best team in the division, but they still got the Jets twice, they still got the Dolphins twice, and those are 4 winnable games. They are an interesting.
Dolphins will be interesting. Dolphins could take a step.
Yes.
They could.
Yes.
So now if you're at the bottom with the Jets, like, I don't know. And the AFC that's the other problem too. It's not just your division. Chargers are set. Chiefs are set.
Well, the West is really good.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, if you're the Patriots, like, it's not like
the Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, and then
it's not like it's not like, well, yeah, Buffalo's there, but we'll get the wild card, and we'll do that. Like, it is. I mean, but even getting the wild card seems absurd for the next couple of.
Well,
years.
Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, and then the Broncos with Russell Wilson is a division for all time.
Totally.
And unfortunately, the Cowboys are in the division with Washington and the Giants. So, yay for us.
I'm still curious about the Broncos. I'm not sold on it.
I think as my son, and you have to see all the roster, how they all fill out. But as my son said, Dad, they won 9 games last year with Drew Lock.
I get
like,
that.
Don't you think Russell Wilson helps? Which is a valid argument.
It's possible.
There's always this. What's funny is we'll be 7 games into the season, and some teams are going to be 1-6, and they're going to be a disaster. And we're going to be like, oh, we didn't know they were that bad.
Yeah.
But because, like, you look through, And I like to look through to see what Vegas says, how many games they think teams are going to win, because that's kind of a good barometer of like, are you a 500 team, are you a playoff team, or are you a bad team?
Right.
But even the bad teams, they have it winning like 4 or 5 games. And we know there's going to be teams that end up the season with 2 wins, 3 wins. Yeah. Who are they? You know, was it last year? One year Jacksonville won their first game and lost 14 in a row. Was that last year?
I can't remember what year it was.
So, but it is.
Think of this. If you're the Patriots, okay, so you're Bill Belichick and you're trying to decide what your future holds. You are not better than the Bills. You're probably not better than the Chiefs. You're probably not better than the Chargers. You're probably not better than the Bengals. You're probably so right there's 4. Now you've got to be better than the Dolphins. You got to be better than the Raiders. You got to be better than the Broncos. You got to be better than the Ravens. You got to be better than the Colts. Like, I just don't see how they're even a wild card moving forward.
It is tough. I agree with you. My team to watch is back to let it go. It depends how good Mac Jones is. Like he needs to be really, really good, really, really quickly. My fascinating team, and this is not people think I'm a hater and just trying to be a jerk and all this stuff, is the Steelers. Because I'm no quarterback, unless all of a sudden now people think Mitch Trubisky's good.
Right.
But their first 6 games, they're at the Bengals, home with the Patriots, at the Browns, which could be one, home with the Jets, and then they got Buffalo and Tampa Bay. So Steeler Nation doesn't start out 2-4 very often.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time. You know, I remember back all those years when people used to complain about Antonio Brown.
Right.
And I was like, well, it makes the world easy when you have the best receiver in the game.
Sure.
And then they had the running back from Michigan State that whatever his name is, and it'll come. Why I suck with names now. Who? Le'Veon. Yes. And people used to complain because they were both a little crazy, and I don't disagree with that. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, there are Hall of Fame talents. Yeah. Like you can't just dish them off and pick up new ones. They're just not. They don't grow on trees. Sure. And the Steelers, they got rid of them. Now they get really ordinary, and they get really ordinary. Now they get rid of Ben. Not they get rid of Ben. Ben retires. Sure. You know, just because Mitch Trubisky puts on black and gold doesn't make him a Pro Bowl quarterback all of a sudden. And when you have a below average, and Kenny Pickett's not ready, he's a rookie yet. Right. So if you have the 23rd best quarterback in the NFL, what do you expect to do?
It's very like San Antonio Spurs-ish. It's a little Atlanta Braves-ish, where I saw the statistic. I think it's from the year 2000. There's only one NFL team that has never been below 500.
It's the Steelers.
And it's the Steelers.
Mike Tomlin has never been below 500, and he'll lose a game in October, and people will talk about him like he's the dumbest person on earth. But all he does is win. But they've had Roethlisberger for
but you ask I guess what I'm saying is it's not a false sense until it happens. It's
the
not a
Steeler
false
fans
sense of
are
reality.
spoiled.
And with some of that comes, like I'm telling you, like the Spurs, the Braves, the Steelers, like there are organizations where like until it actually happens, I remember being a Braves fan like in the 2008 to 2014, and when we were finally bad, and it's like, oh yeah, like you don't just draft a Maddox, like you don't just find like a Furman Griff, it's like hard to find those people.
It's like you just said with elections. Yeah. They're like, there's no way this person can win. Yes. I think there's this belief of Steeler Nation that we can't lose.
Right.
Like we're always a playoff contender. Mm-hmm. Even in our bad years, we're a playoff contender. It's just, are we going to win the division or are we going to win the wild card?
Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating in Western PA.
This is the other sneaky part too. Like you talk about like the Steelers, and you talk about even like the Patriots are a good example of this too. Recently for the Steelers, they have been able to stay good, not because they were good, but because the other teams were bad.
Ohio has been a great help for the Steelers for a while.
And it's the same thing. I'm not saying the Patriots weren't great football teams, but it's really easy to be consistent and healthy and all of those things when your division is just atrocious. And so I am curious, like I said, I think obviously the Bengals are better now. I think the Ravens are
they still have Lamar.
I think the Ravens are better than what people think they are right now. So I think
Cleveland's still a soap opera.
Oh, it's
Yes.
unbelievable.
But no, I'm with you.
Crazy.
I'm with you. That's why I said I'm happy that the Cowboys are in the division with the Giants and Washington, because they don't look very good. Another interesting one will be
Philly's good.
Well, Jalen Hurts is going to be interesting because the honeymoon period doesn't last forever. And there's an aspect where you go from, and his numbers are way better than you think.
But the difference is I think they're good.
It could be.
Yeah. Like I think Philadelphia is actually good this year.
So the question is he good? Or yeah. And at the end of the season, when you're talking about, is he a top 10 NFL quarterback? Is he a top 5? Is he a top 15? Mm-hmm. And those are the questions.
The Commanders still don't have an actual logo. Did you see that?
Oh, no.
So they have like the W, but they still don't have like an actual symbol, like unless they're just sticking with the W, which might be the case. But they technically don't have.
Can they go back now and say, we were wrong. We're just going to stick with football team?
It wasn't. You and I agreed that wasn't an awful idea.
I think it's better than
Commanders. As it was happening, we were like, ugh. But after a year of doing it, you kind of separate yourself. Like you're the football team.
It just become.
It kind of after a year.
There was almost they almost stumbled into a brilliant thing.
Yeah. They kind of sort of did. And I think they abandoned it.
And then to go to Commanders, like if they'd have come up with something good, but.
All right, we're gonna head out. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show.
I still think what was mine? Who
knows?
It wasn't the hush money.
No.
It was something political.
I like the Express, which you did not like.
No, I did not like the Express.
They said the presidents. They talked about the senators.
No, it was something about dishonesty among politicians. Okay. I can't think of what it was, but it was good. I was proud of myself for coming up with it.
So good you can't remember.
It's so good I can't remember it. Hey, it took me 5 minutes to come up with Jamarcus Russell. Yeah, I'll come up with it for tomorrow again, and it'll be good.
Yeah. Oh, I believe you. Well, that was eventually we're going to get to Vegas is getting a basketball team. I don't know if you've heard about all this.
They should.
Seattle's getting the Sonics back.
Are we expanding?
It's going to happen.
So they're bringing two. People aren't moving. They're bringing 2 new teams.
Silver's already kind of hinted at it.
Okay.
Like it's already been moving. There's owners and players by players I mean like financial involvement.
Right.
Like it's happening. Seattle will get one. It's going to Vegas, and so the name of the Vegas basketball team, they could be. I mean, you want to talk about like either $1 million idea or falling flat on its face. If they name the Vegas team the right name, they'll get fans all across the country.
I remember what it was going to be.
What it was going to be?
The corruption.
The Washington corruption.
The Washington corruption.
The corrupt.
I think it sells.
You think it works?
Absolutely.
It might.
Better than Commanders.
I'm not a huge fan of the Commanders.
And you know what's just as bad as Commanders?
Guardians.
I
still every time I see it, I don't know.
I'm with you.
I don't really love it either.
I'm with you. I wonder, and we'll just let people go because this is our hypothetical. Is there any chance? Because I think you kind of universally, people are like, what? And we've seen so many of these because we've seen the NHL expand. We've seen Major League Baseball expand. We've seen the NBA multiple expansions through our lifetimes. And we've seen some cool ones. The Heat and the Lightning and the T-Wolves. And like, there have been some ones that people were like, hey, that's the Diamondbacks. Like, there were some good ones.
Yeah.
And then both of these came out and people are like, is there any chances that the organizations are like, nah, we're going to do a do-over. We were the Guardians for 2 years. We've decided we don't like Guardians. We're going to this.
In football, I would be willing to do it only because football is so resilient. Like, fans just won't leave.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter what the players do, what the owners do. Like, people won't leave. So if I was a football team, yes, I would change it if I didn't like it. Other sports, you might start to, chap some people a little bit the wrong way. I would be a little more hesitant if I was like the Guardians or if I was a basketball team. Or even a hockey team.
The Tampa Bay Rays were the Devil Rays for a while.
I remember that.
And then they dropped it.
Okay. Don't you think that's
because
okay?
everyone just called them the Rays.
They were the Rays.
They were just the Rays.
And it was what it was.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
What was the other one? The worst one ever. And I don't know if you remember this or not. The Wizards finally, people learned to love the Wizards. I remember when Washington first decided to be that, people were kind of like, what? But now people like it. The worst one ever was the Charlotte Bobcats. And do you remember that when it came out? What a joke that was.
Mm-mm.
You don't remember the Charlotte Bobcats? For the professional basketball? NBA?
No.
In the NBA, the Charlotte Hornets moved to New Orleans because I forget what it was. There was something going on. They moved to New Orleans, but they kept the name Hornets.
I knew they were the New Orleans Hornets for a little while.
They kept the name Hornets. But in the meantime, another franchise happened in Charlotte, and they called them the Bobcats because the owner's name was Robert. And so he wanted the team to be named after him. So they called themselves the Charlotte Bobcats.
Huh.
Yes. And then when New Orleans decided to become the Pelicans to reflect their culture and their region, they gave the name graciously back to Charlotte, and Charlotte accepted it
and became the Hornets again. The Charlotte Bobcats. I don't remember that. How long were they the Bobcats?
I would
couple years?
Yeah, a couple of years. It wasn't, let's put it this way, it wasn't like a 1 or 2 year thing. Like, it was a while. They were bad, though. Like, that was like the Gerald Wallace years, stuff like that. Do you remember that at all?
I remember Gerald Wallace. You remember the Spirit of St. Louis. Have I ever told you that story? And then I'll shut up.
Real quick, they were the Charlotte Bobcats from 2004 to 2014.
For 10 years.
For a decade.
I must have known that then.
Yeah. Really bad. Really bad. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Do you know the story of the Spirit of St. Louis? The ABA team?
I know. So I know about the team. What about their logo?
That when they merged, do you know any of the financial story behind this?
Didn't they go to Atlanta?
No. There was, I'll tell you this quick. This is a neat story. If you ever want to look it up. They were an ABA team. I think the ABA was folding. I think they were down to 6.
Okay.
And so the NBA was just going to acquire whatever they bought the league for, $10 or whatever it was. But there were 4 of the 6 teams. There were 4 that they wanted. New Jersey, San Antonio. I don't know. There were 4 that they wanted. Indiana's one of them. There's one more. There were 2 that they didn't want. One was I want to say the Kentucky Headhunters were still around.
Colonels.
The Kentucky Colonels?
Yes.
Okay. And the Spirit of St. Louis.
Okay.
I think those were the 2 that hadn't folded yet. So they went to those 2 teams because they acquired the whole league. So they're like, here are your options.
Oh, is this the owners getting the checks and they're still getting paid? Continue.
You can either take a straight cash fee of, and this was in the 70s.
Sure.
It was $2 million, $4 million, something like that.
Yeah.
We either give you this much money for your failing team.
Yes.
Or you can have what would be your percentage of future TV deals. So you would get 1/28 of TV deals in perpetuity. And in the 70s, if there was was the NBA on NBC back in the 70s?
Until the 80s, the NBA was almost folded every single year.
Almost.
Yes.
So there's no money. So there were they just like 3 Italian, but they might have been in their 20s. They were young that owned this team. And they're like, yeah, we'll take the long play. Okay. And they have made, I think they have a letterhead and they have a P.O. box. And every year they get a check from the NBA for buku bucks because they took it. Yeah. And
I do remember hearing about that.
It is the Spirit of St. Louis was the name of the team. You can Google it. That is a great name
too.
That is a great name.
I'm assuming they still own the team name. They probably still have the trademark.
They must have the trademark.
Okay.
It is a neat story.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news.
The corruption
would be good. Also, too, Queen Elizabeth just passed away.
Is it official?
It's official.
Okay.
It is official. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina, and we will see you.